Sunday. I don't know if Happy Sunday is a thing that people say, but Happy Sunday nonetheless. My mic is a traitorous bastard. There we go. So yeah, I hope everybody's doing okay. Typically, today is a patron appreciation episode, but Mrs. Thomas sent out a patron message, or I should say contributor appreciation. I'm trying to change the name of that. Yeah, typically this is contributor appreciation. But today, Mrs. Thomas is sick. She has some kind of sinus allergy thing. She's, it's like she has a migraine, so she's in bed at this point. Mom is ill. She's not feeling well. Not ill, I should say. She's not feeling well. It's like the dog's asleep. The world is, or I should say my world, for the time being, is somewhat at peace, at least for these few hours. So I'm not going anywhere today. There's nowhere to go, per se. So I'm going to be here, and I'm probably going to be doing the news. I don't necessarily do the news fully on Sundays, with the exception of patron appreciation, but today I'll be here. So I have several, bombshell is too strong, but very damn interesting stories. At least I think they're interesting. And this is, for the most part, a self-directed show on my part, using audience input on certain things that I may like. So let's start this way. Tomorrow, we're going to try to run the patron appreciation episode again. Hopefully, Mrs. Thomas is doing okay. If she is not doing okay, then I'm just going to do it by myself. That is going to be Monday at 6 p.m. Monday at 6 p.m. for the contributor appreciation episode. For today, let's go for a slate of shows. And I'm going to do this like I typically do it, with moments in between in order to set up for the next broadcast. So let's start here. This was a damn interesting conversation between Andrew Yang and Jimmy Dore. Now, I am a fan of Jimmy Dore. I like him. He is wrong here. He's aggressively wrong here. And he's aggressively wrong in a way where he is like going after Andrew Yang. And Andrew Yang is right in what he's saying. In fact, if Dore stops for the moment and logically thinks about it, what Yang is saying is right. Just because something is a right-wing talking point that the right wing blows out of perspective and uses it as a cudgel in order to attack, people who are pushing for a particular policy, doesn't mean that it's wrong as an absolute. It takes a little bit more context. Yang was trying to give you a little bit more context. And what Yang is saying here, if you logically think about it, makes all the sense in the world and is right. Take a look at this. Let's see this video. It's funny, right? Because Dore, they're having this debate on the minimum wage, and Dore asks Yang if he's for the minimum wage. Yang says he's not for it. I disagree with Yang on that point. And by the way, I'm not even in this camp of supporting Yang per se. This is more about just what's subjectively true. Yang says he's not for the minimum wage. I disagree with Yang on that, and I'll explain why when we get to it. Dore pushes into this of why are you against the minimum wage? And when Yang explains why, he gives an argument, and at this point you drill down further into kind of another part of the conversation, and Dore is making the point that Yang is wrong, that he is completely wrong, that based on some kind of economic theory that Yang is wrong. I don't know what economic theory Dore is going with to call it wrong, but let's take a look at the video and let's go from there. These two had a really decent conversation, and I gotta be honest, this is why I want Yang on the debate stage, because some of the conversations that you're going to end up with Yang talking about the system itself, but not just working within the context of the system, meaning not just moving around deck chairs, but actually getting a little bit further into the heart of the system. Whether I agree with him on it is less important to me or less relevant to me than the conversation taking place. This idea of a new deal, and you ask the question, why do you need a new deal? Shouldn't you do something to prevent the fact of having your deal unraveling, or the unraveling of your deal in the first place? And if it happened once, whatever policy you're going to put forth, shouldn't it deal with the fact that it unraveled once? What stops it from unraveling again if it's not something that you're paying discrete attention to? But let's take a look at this argument. Disagree with Yang on the minimum wage thing. Disagree with Dore on his logic of why Yang is wrong. But let's hear him out.
And for a minimum wage, what are you for, the 15 or the 20 or the 25? Are you for one of those?
Well, I'm for 100% for the spirit that no American should be working full time and not be able to pay their bills. But the reality is, if we move to a $15 minimum wage, there are many, many small businesses and industries like fast food that would probably end up getting rid of shifts in workers. Because if you have a fast food restaurant that's paying people $9.25 an hour, and then you say it's 15, then they're going to look around and be like, huh, it's like robot burger flipper time, or it's like self-serve kiosk time, which might be okay. But I'm suggesting that if we put $1,000 a month into people's hands, then that serves as a virtual raise for every worker. It makes workers much harder to exploit. It actually rewards mothers and caregivers who right now a minimum wage would not impact. Like a freedom dividend is much, much broader and bigger, and then we can turn to a minimum wage, but the need for it goes much, much lower because I'm essentially giving everyone $1,000 a month raise, which would raise the effective minimum wage to close to $15 an hour anyway.
So, okay, well, I don't agree with that because, that idea that if we raise people's wages, they'll automate them. They will automate them if they can. They're not doing that because they're nice, right? Or because they would, if they could automate their jobs right now, they would do it right now. And that the only reason
that is generally true.
Completely true, with one caveat. Assuming for the moment that all things stay the same. Just think about it. You're a small business, you're a restaurant. You're paying your workers, let's say you have 10 workers, you're paying them $10 an hour or $9 an hour. And you are not living high off the hog. And I'm using this example because this is the example he used. But even if it's not a restaurant, name any of the, many of the industries where it's a small business and they're living on the margins, where they're not making bangs of bucks. They're making a certain, a wage of sorts. And you tell them that you need to pay $15 an hour. Like, what do you honestly think they're going to do? Every other factor or every other variable is staying the same. They're not getting additional people coming in, meaning they're not getting additional business. And in addition to not getting additional business, like I said, they're not living high off the hog. What are they going to do? Do you think the boss is going to cut his own wages? The boss is not going to cut his own wages. What the boss is going to do is one or two things. You've changed the economics of his business. And that business is going to try to move and shake and maneuver itself in order to maintain itself while simultaneously keeping the economics in a way that makes sense to the business itself. Because whether people should get a minimum wage or not is secondary to the economics of it. And I guarantee you, in a capitalist enterprise, the economics of it is going to matter more than what you should or should not get. They're going to fire a worker, and they're going to use the money of that worker almost like feeding off the carcass of the worker to essentially pay the other people the $15 an hour minimum wage. Look at what Amazon did. Amazon didn't just say a blanket $15 an hour minimum wage. Amazon changed the dynamics of the company itself, meaning the overtime or the seasonal overtime that some of the people were getting in order to make it better for the company. They try to balance out the fact that they now have to pay people $15 an hour minimum wage. They took from one side of the company and things that people were doing in order to make additional profit, in order to pay the new workers who are getting $15 an hour. I'm saying no company is just going to stand there and just accept the $15 an hour minimum wage if all of the factors remain true. And what Yang is saying here is that they would automate it. That's another point. Say you have that fast food company. If all of the factors remain true, which I don't know why they wouldn't, you increase the wage $15 an hour minimum wage. People are not going to buy more burgers because you said you're $15 an hour minimum wage. So assume, nothing else changes. Same number of people who are coming in. What is the company going to do? You've changed the economics. So now, even beforehand, where it wasn't acceptable to put that burger flipping robot in, now it may be. Meaning it may now make sense from an economic standpoint to put some kind of machinery, kiosk, or something in that can do what you do without having a worker that is going to cost you a certain amount of money. It is true that if companies had the opportunity to automate now, they would, because after all, again, this is a capitalistic enterprise. The goal of it is to maximize profit, not to give somebody a job. But what Yang is saying here is right. That logically right. If you change the dynamics and the economics by which a company works, which is exactly what you're doing when you increase the minimum wage. And again, I am for increasing the minimum wage, so don't misunderstand me. um, then it may make sense to automate a particular process or to get rid of a worker or something that would allow the company to maintain its profitability without, cutting its debt. All I'm saying is Yang is right. And I think from the beginning of my show, I've kind of made this argument about automation. Automation here is not really the problem. The problem is the way we've organized our society. And I think Yang is trying to get kind of to that point of saying, look, your society is going to change whether you want it to or not. Your perspective within the society itself needs to change. Your issue is not the automation. Your issue is not the automation. The issue is the way you have all of that automation and all of the benefits of that automation, or the bulk of it, going to a small body of human beings, top 1%, as opposed to it being used for the benefit of all humanity. The system that allows that to take place is the thing that needs to be challenged and looked at. That makes all the sense in the world. Those things are going to be automated. Here's another one, Uber. You tell an Uber driver, let's say you tell Uber you need to pay people $15 an hour minimum wage, whatever that is. Uber right now is working on technology to automate cars. I will guarantee you that they would speed up that process. Now, this doesn't mean that you shouldn't give people $15 an hour minimum wage. So don't misunderstand me. I'm just saying that all of these things are true at once. It is true that people should get a decent, livable wage. It is true that companies try to maximize their profit and they do whatever they can to maximize that profit. If that's cutting wages, cutting workers, etc., etc. It is also true that all other factors staying the same, meaning you haven't got this influx of human beings, people buying your product and using your service, that if you change the economics where now the money that is going out increases because you have to pay people $15 an hour minimum wage, that company, I guarantee you, is incentivized like all get out to try to find a way to mitigate the fact that they have to pay those people $15 an hour. If that is automating the process, if that is firing a human being, the company would do it. It makes all the logical sense in the world for them to. Just saying. Let's keep going.
Yeah,
but
so
it is possible that if you change the economic incentives to automate something, it might become more appealing.
Right. Okay. But I like to bowl. We don't have pin setters anymore. It's not because they tried to get more money for pin setters. Okay.
It is also true too, though, Jimmy, that like if you look at like some struggling mom and pop retailer around the country, like a lot of them are paying their workers like $9-10 an hour, and then if you say, hey, it's $15, like some of them might cut back shifts or some of them might struggle. Like I've run a small private company, and a lot of these small businesses are really, really close to, like the red at any moment in time,
Mm-hmm.
and something that seems like completely common sense to us, being like, hey, just pay people $15 an hour, actually would cause some of these businesses to say, you know what, I'm gonna have to cut a shift or cut a worker at the margins. So again, I just rather just give people the raise directly, and I think workers would prefer that too.
Yeah.
If we just put $1,000 a month in your hand.
Yeah, I mean, again, the UBI is you're correct on that, and you're incorrect on the other stuff. Businesses hire when there's a demand for their product. End of sentence. And if there's a demand for their product, they got to hire a worker. And nobody's going to go, boy, I have all these orders, but I can't pay that guy $15, so I'm not going to fill them. So
nobody postulated that the demand increases. That's the problem with the argument. No one in any of this has postulated that the demand increased. Nobody at all. He didn't do it, nor did you do it. It's only right here where you injected, nobody is going to turn down putting a worker in that position if the demand increases. But demand hasn't increased. You've just increased the minimum wage without necessarily an increase in demand. And Yang, again, made the point that this is around the margins. The reason why I'm for the increase of $15 an hour minimum wage, while simultaneously accepting that there will be some people who would logically either cut shifts, cut workers, maybe not hire in a particular position, I accept all that because when those people finally do get a job, it will be $15 an hour. And the number of people who may lose a job, it may be around the margins, while simultaneously, with the increase in the money that's in people's pocket, as it's being injected back into the economy, there may be other sectors that get more workers. I guess I'm saying what Yang is saying here is right, that this may cause effects around the margins, but it not necessarily may be an overall beneficial effect. It may be an overall beneficial effect. By the same token, yeah, it will affect around the margins. I guess it seems like Dore is willing to die on this hill when I don't think he's right. On the secondary point, what Yang is talking about here. The problem with this argument that I think from Yang's point of view is if you're doing a job, maybe you should get a $15 an hour minimum wage. Like, I don't like this idea that the government is subsidizing workers when those workers should be paid a decent wage. And I guarantee you, is this going to be gamed? Is it going to be a situation where companies say, well, I don't have to pay you $10 an hour. Maybe I can pay you less now since the government is giving you $1,000. So when you get your job, this job may be paying less. Maybe it's paying $8 an hour because the rationale of the company is that the government is paying more. I guess I'm trying to make this point that this notion that because the government is giving $1,000 a month, that workers shouldn't be paid for the labor that they're doing at a decent wage. Like, the minimum wage is more than just about being able to live. It's also this thing that you should be compensated for the work that you're doing. And this company that is the exploitation of labor should pay its people a fair wage. And this especially gets into companies like Walmart or Amazon, these type of multinational corporations that have the money that's not living off the margins. That's where it's most prominent and most egregious. But Yang's point is very specific to margins, small businesses. And would this adversely affect those businesses? The answer is yes. By the same token, is that enough of a reason not to do it? No, because the overall benefit is going to be beneficial to the economy itself. And like I said, when those people finally get a job, they're going to get a decent, livable wage, regardless of the job they get. I disagree with Yang on this idea that people shouldn't, it's like the government should be subsidizing these companies from the standpoint of wages. But Dore is missing this, and it makes sense why he's in his feelings about this thing that people should get a decent wage. Yes, people should get a decent wage. But the capitalistic system itself presses down on that notion of getting decent wages because it adversely affects profits. Profitability is the only thing that matters. So in a situation where you're hurting their profitability by forcing up wages, are they going to, twist in order to accommodate that in a way that they can maintain their profitability? The answer is yes. Could that mean leaving the country? Yes. Could that mean depression of wages? Yes. Is it a right-wing talking point? Yes. Does it make it false? No. It's logically true. The right wing blows it out of proportion. This is more an issue around the margins. I just want that to be clear.
So that's illogical. That is a right-wing talking point. That is not how economics works.
Businesses are not flourishing at that level. If they're just living hand to mouth and they don't have the orders, and they have a hard time even paying the people they have, if you elevate those costs, it might in some situations mean they cut shifts or cut workers. I mean, that
is not economic theory. That is sound. That is right-wing talking points. But
he said that's not economic theory. That's sound. That's a right-wing talking point. If Jimmy Dore agrees that automation is an issue, if he agrees with that, which clearly he does. I mean, they seem to be having this conversation where he accepts that they would automate a job if they had the potential to automate a job. Why? Why do they automate? Does he believe that they automate for shits and giggles? Or does he believe they automate because the finances of automation becomes more favorable in a way that automation makes more sense than having a worker do that job? Meaning, if it is more advantageous for me to have an elevator that doesn't have a person manning the elevator stall, because now the technology has gotten so cheap to do it, and it is cheaper than having a worker there. All right, I'm going to put in an elevator, an automated elevator. But understand, all of this still boils down to the finances. This is the economics of running a business and a way of increasing profitability while lowering costs. If Dore agrees with that basic premise, which he does, because he's talking to Yang and he's agreeing that companies will automate when they have the opportunity to automate, then why is he against this idea that if you change the economic dynamics, that they wouldn't automate sooner? Like, I don't understand why this is such a sticking point. Automated cars will take over when a human driver becomes problematic to the company. Or as to say, when a human driver becomes more expensive. But again, we're still talking about costs. How much does it cost to put a human driver in that car versus the profit you can get out of that human driver? how much would it cost to put an automated machine in that car versus the cost of using a human being? And when it gets to the point that that machine can do the job better or offer something that the human being can't offer, then they're going to take the robot. If you agree that this boils down to some degree an issue of economics, meaning this company can increase its profitability and lower its cost by using a machine, then we're at the very least agreeing that the basics, that the economics is one of the things that's changing or just driving the machines or driving this idea of automating jobs. It gets cheaper to do, and it gets cheaper than human labor, not to mention more efficient. Then why is this such a sticking point? I don't understand why it's such a sticking point. I think it's because he thinks of it as a right-wing talking point. And because he thinks of it as a right-wing talking point, he's almost kind of assuming that Yang is blowing this to proportions, that the right wing's blowing. It's like, oh my God, 50% of the country is going to lose their jobs. That's nonsense. It's like, it depends on how you talk about it. And given, I guess, the larger contextual argument of why, of why you should have a minimum wage. This idea of paying people $2 an hour and then having the government subsidize it. No, but we can still have an honest conversation about how technology affects our society and the economic drivers of that technology affecting our society. But let's be very clear that part of the reason that this is taking place is because economics has gotten to the point where the machines are cheaper. If you make labor more expensive, then those machines get cheaper faster. I don't understand why that is such in contention here, but they are warring over this one particular point. At some point, Jimmy Dore leaves it, and they start talking about it in a different way. But I was fascinated by this conversation. But it end this because at this point we're talking about shaving genitals. I just thought if I expected it in a female, I should be willing to do the same. Just saying. The bag is everything. The bag is everything. Guys, you all have a good day. I'm going to see you guys for a few additional shows. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and you can always support this content on PayPal or Patreon. We're going to have the contributor appreciation special tomorrow at 6 p.m. I am hoping my wife feels better. And if she does, she's going to come on the show. If not, I'm just going to do it alone. But nevertheless, thank you all for joining us. And me, it's not us, it's just me. And I will see you guys probably in about 30 minutes or so. Thanks all. And stop. And stop.